Hey there, I'm Emily Carter, a 25-year-old with big dreams of making a name for myself in journalism. I grew up in a seemingly idyllic suburb with my adoptive parents, John and Linda Carter. Around town, they're well known for their generous charitable donations and active roles in local committees. On the surface, our family seemed perfect, but behind closed doors, there was always an undercurrent of unease, especially when the topic of money came up. "Just focus on your studies, Emily," Dad would say whenever I tried to bring up our finances, quickly steering the conversation elsewhere. Mom wasn't much different, her voice overly cheerful as she'd say, "Let's not worry about money, dear. Let's focus on the present." But then, everything changed on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. I found an unexpected letter in the mail, stamped with the seal of a law firm I'd never heard of. The letter claimed that my biological grandfather, a man I never even knew existed, had left me a substantial inheritance. Confused and with the letter trembling in my hands, I went straight to my parents. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Mom insisted, barely glancing at the letter. Dad was quick to dismiss it as well, chuckling nervously, probably just someone's idea of a joke. But their forced laughter didn't reach their eyes. "Why wouldn't you tell me I had a grandfather? Why now?" I demanded. They exchanged a look, one of those looks that said they wish I hadn't asked. "Emily, we wanted to protect you," Mom finally said with a sigh, taking my hand. "We thought it was best if you focused on your future, not on past complications. But isn't it my right to know where I come from?" I pressed on. Dad stood up, his chair scraping against the tile. "Sometimes knowing less is better. This inheritance, it's probably nothing but trouble." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. That night, I lay awake, the letter glowing ominously in the moonlight on my nightstand. My mind raced with questions about who my grandfather was and what secrets my parents were hiding. First thing in the morning, I decided I had to find out the truth. The next day, I met with Mark Thompson, an old friend from high school who'd become a private investigator. Over coffee, I spilled everything. "So you think they're hiding something big?" Mark's eyes were sharp and calculating. "It's not just a feeling anymore," I admitted, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "There's a real inheritance, and they knew. We'll get to the bottom of this, Emily. If there's something to uncover, we'll find it," Mark assured me, his tone firm and confident. With Mark's help, we started digging into my parents' financial records and researching my mysterious grandfather. Each piece of information we uncovered only led to more questions. What were John and Linda Carter really hiding, and why had they gone to such lengths to keep it from me? The story was only just beginning to unfold, and I knew that whatever we discovered would change everything. Despite the fear of the unknown, I was determined to uncover the truth buried beneath years of carefully constructed lies. I reached out to the law firm mentioned in the letter, making sure to make the call away from the prying ears of my increasingly watchful parents. Sitting in my car outside a small coffee shop, I dialed the number, my heart pounding with each ring. "Good morning, Hamilton and Pierce Associates. How may I help you?" The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. "I received a letter about an inheritance from a Mr. Albert Clark. I need to verify its authenticity," I explained, trying to mask my anxiety. "One moment, Miss Carter. I'll connect you to Mr. Davis, the attorney handling Mr. Clark's estate." The line clicked, and after a tense wait, a deeper voice came on. "Miss Carter, I've been expecting your call. Yes, the inheritance is quite real, and you are indeed the sole heir to Mr. Clark's estate, which includes several properties and a significant financial portfolio." Why wasn't I informed sooner? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. My voice tight with emotion. "There were complications, legalities that needed sorting out due to the nature of your adoption," Mr. Davis explained. "If you could come to our office, we can discuss this in detail and show you all the relevant documents." Agreeing to meet him, I hung up, feeling a potent mix of vindication and a deep swirling anger. I needed more than just answers. I needed to understand the full extent of the betrayal. Back home, I noticed a shift in my parents' behavior. They were nervous, overly attentive. I caught Mom hovering outside my room more than once, and Dad had taken to checking the mail himself. "You're sure you're okay, Emily?" Mom would ask, eyeing my phone suspiciously. "Just tired from work, Mom," I'd reply, keeping my plans close to my chest. I knew I needed help, so I reconnected with Mark Thompson, an old friend who had gone into private investigation. We met at a park, far from any prying eyes. Mark, I think my parents have been using my inheritance without my knowledge, I confided under the guise of a casual chat. He nodded, his expression serious. Do you have any idea how much we're talking about? Enough that they've been living off it, and then some. I sighed. Can you help me find out exactly what they've been up to? Of course, Emily. I'll dig into everything. Bank records, transactions, property deeds. We'll get you the truth, Mark promised, a determined glint in his eye. Over the next few weeks, Mark worked tirelessly, piecing together the financial puzzle. What he found was worse than I had feared. Not only had my parents been withdrawing large sums regularly, but they'd also funded luxurious vacations and high-end investments, all under the guise of their modest community lifestyle. He laid out the evidence one evening in his office, a line of documents and photos spread across the desk. Here's the proof, Emily. They've been bleeding your inheritance dry for years. I stared at the evidence, each document a confirmation of their deceit. They had planned to keep it going indefinitely, controlling my life and legacy without my consent. The betrayal stung deeper than I could have imagined. They weren't just controlling my financial future. They had lied about every aspect of my past, my heritage, and who I was. It was clear what I had to do next. The truth had to come out, and my parents had to be held accountable, not just for the deception, but for the sheer audacity of their greed. As the pieces fell into place, I prepared for the confrontation that would inevitably come. It wouldn't be easy, but armed with the truth, I was ready to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The community event was a perfect setting. A yearly gala celebrating local philanthropy where my parents, John and Linda, were to be highlighted for their selfless contributions to the community. The irony wasn't lost on me as I helped Mark finalize our plan to expose their greed and deceit in the most public way possible. We've got everything set, Emily, Mark briefed me as we surveyed the event hall, beautifully decorated but soon to be a stage for confrontation. The lawyer, Mr. Davis, and a rep from the trust will be there. They'll back you up when you make your move. And the media? I asked, my stomach tightening. Got a couple of local journalists who think they're covering a feel-good story about community leaders. They'll get more than they bargained for, he replied with a wry smile. As guests began to fill the hall, I mingled, my heart racing. I spotted my parents laughing and engaging with donors, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. I approached them, my resolve hardening. Mom, Dad, I called out, keeping my voice cheerful. Emily, you decided to come after all. My mom greeted me, her smile wide, but her eyes flickering with something just beneath the surface. I couldn't quite place the emotion in her eyes, but I nodded, watching as the room filled and my allies subtly positioned themselves. The moment was drawing near. As my parents took the stage, the crowd quieted, hanging on their every word about charity and community. My hands clenched into fists at the hypocrisy. It was time. I moved toward the stage, catching Mark's nod from where he stood by the door. I ascended the steps just as they were finishing up their speech, the applause ringing in my ears. Thank you, everyone, I began, my voice loud and clear, cutting through the claps. The room fell silent, surprised by my sudden appearance. I wish I could stand here and just praise my parents, but truth and transparency are vital in a community like ours. Confusion spread across the faces in the crowd as my parents looked at me, bewildered, then slowly turning fearful. I recently discovered that my inheritance from my biological grandfather, which I knew nothing about until a few weeks ago, has been used by my adoptive parents for their personal gain, without my knowledge, without my consent. I continued, the words heavy but freeing. The crowd murmured, and my parents' faces drained of color. This is nonsense. My dad finally burst out. Emily, let's talk about this privately. No, John, she won't. Mr. Davis stepped forward, his presence commanding. I am here representing Emily and her grandfather's estate. Every word she has said is backed by undeniable evidence. A representative from the trust joined us, holding up documents. These are records of transactions and withdrawals made by Mr. and Mrs. Carter from Emily's inheritance fund, all without her knowledge or permission. The journalists started snapping photos, their pens flying over notepads. My parents stood frozen, their facade crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. Everything I ever believed about my family has been a lie, I said, my voice cracking slightly. But today that ends. The lawyer handed me a folder. which I held up for the crowd to see. Here is the proof, not just of the funds taken, but of the trust betrayed. The crowd's shock turned into an audible uproar, my parents' reputation unraveling in real time. They tried to speak, to salvage their image, but the evidence was too damning, the betrayal too deep. As they were led away to deal with the immediate fallout, questions buzzed around them, but no answers could repair the damage they had done. I stood there, a mix of relief and sorrow washing over me. The truth was out, the mask was off, and my journey toward reclaiming my life had just begun. In the days following the gala, the story of John and Linda Carter's deceit made headlines across local and even national news outlets. The community that once held them in high regard now watched as they faced investigations for fraud and embezzlement. As the legal proceedings unfolded, it became clear that their social standing and influence could not shield them from the consequences of their actions. Meanwhile, I took legal steps to secure my inheritance, the process expedited by the overwhelming evidence against my adoptive parents. Recovering these assets was more than just a financial victory, it was a reclaiming of my identity and rightful legacy. With the funds finally under my control, I decided to use part of my wealth to establish scholarships for adopted children, aiming to give back to a community that, like me, might have faced hidden struggles. Furthermore, in honor of the grandfather I never knew, I founded the Albert Clark Foundation. The foundation focused on transparency and ethics in adoption processes, ensuring that others wouldn't face the kind of betrayal I did. Each step in setting up the foundation felt like therapy, a way to transform my pain into something positive and lasting. Despite numerous attempts by John and Linda to reach out, seeking forgiveness and a chance to explain their side of the story, I refused any reconciliation. Their actions had spoken louder than any words could, and my path forward did not include them. Forgiveness was a bridge too far, a closure I was not ready to offer. As I carved a new path for myself, my passion for journalism reignited with fierce intensity. I poured my experiences and the lessons learned into writing an investigative piece titled Inheritance of Deceit, a personal journey through betrayal and justice. The article detailed not only my story but also explored broader issues of trust and corruption in familial relationships. Upon publication, my article received widespread acclaim, resonating with readers who admired not only the personal narrative but also the call for transparency and ethical responsibility. The public support was overwhelming, and I felt a deep sense of accomplishment and resolution. My story had not only made a difference in my life, but also sparked conversations about deeper societal issues. Standing in my new office overlooking the city, I realized how far I'd come. The view was not just of buildings and streets, but of a future I had reclaimed. The skyline was bright, the possibilities endless, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. My journey had been fraught with pain and betrayal, but it had led me to a place of strength and purpose. And so my message to anyone listening is simple. Seek the truth, fight for justice, and let your story be heard. Should individuals always seek justice at the expense of family bonds, even when those bonds are deeply flawed? Only you can answer that question for yourself. But in my experience, justice was the only path to reclaiming my life and finding my true purpose.